Hello, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Brian Michael.
And I'm Angela Yeager. Welcome to a special episode of Real Film Snobs. We are going to be counting down our top favorite movies, numbers 11 through 20 on this week's show. And you can also find our 1 through 10, which we taped several years ago, on our website at realfilmsnobs.com, in case you're wondering what those are and wondering why we're starting with number 20. So without any further ado, we'll start with my number 20 film, which is Chinatown by Roman Polanski.
Ooh.
So the film that once long ago, before I was a more schooled film snob, was on my top 10, but since then I've had to juggle things around quite a bit, and Chinatown remains a favorite of mine. I rewatched it recently, probably about a month ago, and it still remains a great modern film noir, one of Jack Nicholson's greatest performance, a great potboiler of a film, with also performances by John Huston and Faye Dunaway.
Ooh, moving right along. Okay, so we'll go on to my number 20. This is a romantic comedy, a smart romantic comedy from the 80s, Broadcast News. This is a James L. Brooks picture. James L. Brooks has just always had this very special place in my heart. When they talk about movie magic and Steven Spielberg, James L. Brooks just knows how to get right to the heart of the matter for me. He has quick, razor-sharp dialogue in this film. It's like Howard Hawks if he directed Network. It's a razor-sharp dialogue. It's very smart with its commentary on news media and where it was going at the time, and certainly where it is now. And William Hurt, Albert Brooks, oh my gosh, and Holly Hunter are absolutely fantastic. My favorite scene, of course, is where Albert Brooks tells her how he feels about her. I've acted that scene out for you at a party recently, and I absolutely just love this film. And of course, every time I film this show, I pull the back of my jacket to keep the string lines smart.
My favorite scene in the movie is when he starts sweating on camera, which of course is a very over-the-top scene, but as when we first ever taped this show, I can relate. I didn't start sweating, but you know, when you're on camera, the first time ever, strange things can happen. It's a great film. So my number 19 film is Sweet Smell of Success by the director Alexander MacKendrick from 1957. This is a film that I just recently rewatched at the Elsinore, thanks to the great Rob Bibler, who put on the Blu-ray edition. And man, does this film look good on Blu-ray, let me tell you. It made me thinking I should get a Blu-ray player. This is Tony Curtis's perhaps his greatest performance, definitely his best dramatic performance, next to Some Like It Hot. It is such an amazing film. Kirk Douglas as sorry, not Kirk Douglas. Gosh,
Burt Lancaster.
Burt Lancaster. Thank you. Burt Lancaster as a sleazy columnist. Tony Curtis as a sleazy PR agent. It's also a noir of sorts. It's also a great New York film where you just feel like the steam. You can actually see the steam and coming off the streets and the stir of the street. It's just. I can't say how much I love this film.
Did you first see this movie? Because I think we saw it within the last 5 years for the first time. We see it the first time on this show.
There's quite a few of these films that I've only seen in the last few years. I'm a young.
We talked about this. Okay,
but it's been out for a lot longer.
That's all right. My number 19 is Akira Kurosawa's Redbeard. I know a lot of people think that Seven Samurai or Rashomon would be one, but Redbeard is certainly one that strikes a little closer to my heart. Certainly Kurosawa's films are always didactic, but this one literally is with a doctor experience taking on a younger doctor and teaching him the ways of healing people and becoming a man. This has fantastic tension with a young woman, the patient that they're working with, who tries to kill one of the doctors. This has Toshiro Mifune, who's just one of my second favorite actor, in fact. This is a grand role for him where really you get to see the great power that he has just with the looks that he gives people. He doesn't have a lot of lines in this film. And him and Kurosawa, this is their last picture of what 16 they did together. And it's an epic film. It's extremely long. And the first time I saw it, I just wanted to do the 20 test and do 20 minutes of it and see what I thought of it. And I ended up sitting down and watching the entire thing in one sitting and just had to go out and buy the picture. Of course, my favorite scene in this one was where Toshiro Mifune, I guess, to flex his muscles and takes on a bunch of guys who are trying to keep this young woman in this whorehouse. He beats them up and then chastises them because now he has to fix all of them. And so he has to go around and to help them out. So another Kurosawa picture. I had to figure out which Kurosawa picture I had to put in there, and this is the one that I always think of first. Love this film. Underrated.
You mentioned your second favorite actor, and my next film is from my favorite actor of all time, and of course he had a movie in my top 10 as well. My number 18 film is The Awful Truth by Leo McCarey, which is kind of an interesting pick because it's not the Cary Grant movie I think a lot of people think of as much, but I got this Cary Grant box set a few years back, and I'd seen this film before, and I watched through the whole box set again. They were all films I'd seen a million times. Philadelphia Story, of course, is in my top 10. It's a great film. The Awful Truth is one of the just sheer most enjoyable, most fun films, and I think one of the best comedies just for sheer laughs. I mean, every minute there is practically a laugh in this film, and just for something, and lately I've really needed it. Maybe that's why, maybe this is an emotional pick, but this is just a great film that will make you laugh, and it's a very daring performance by Cary Grant. There's some sort of gender bending and some different, and he's such a supportive, generous actor with his female co-stars, and you can really see that in this film. And Irene Dunne is fantastic in this film. It's very edgy, it's very funny, it's just a great film.
All right. Ooh, we're just cranking right along. My number 18 is from the 1990s. This is Jane Campion's The Piano. This is certainly one of the films I saw 3 different times in the theater when it first came out, and was just struck by the beauty and the elegance of this picture, and certainly the more grittier sides of this drama. Harvey Keitel as a romantic lead. Who would ever saw that coming? And of course, we see a lot of Harvey Keitel in the movie, one of the many times in the 90s, in fact. And Holly Hunter, yet again, fantastic, an incredible performance. So a woman who has chosen not to speak. Why I like this movie, it has nothing to do with my life. And of course, Anna Paquin, as soon as she hits the screen, I remember thinking, this is going to be someone to watch. I don't watch True Blood, but I've certainly watched her career all the way since then. I loved, of course, there's another film with a love triangle. I don't understand what that is when some of the films that I've got here. But
what does it say about Bryan?
Michael Nyman's score. There's not many scores that I usually talk about, but this is one that I have. I still listen to. I constantly hear. I absolutely loved it. It's everything about this film I just absolutely loved. And of course, the best scene was where they sit and negotiate over her earning the piano back key by key, and that hole in her stocking that he puts his finger in. Love this film.
It's a great film. Jane Campion continues to be a director to watch. Bright Star, of course, as you know, is a film I loved of hers, and she's one of the films from that period that came out in the 90s during that sort of wave of independent directors, and is proven to be one of the formidable ones who continues to have a great career. So I agree, a great film. Not in my 11 through 20, but a great film nonetheless. Number 17 for me is Tokyo Story by Ozu from 1953, another 50s film. I noticed when I was making my list I had a lot of films from the 50s, but I was juggling, and so what Ozu film do I want to put in? And I always go back to Tokyo Story, which I think is his greatest film. It's certainly the film that really got to me emotionally the first time I saw it, and has so on repeated viewings. It doesn't seem to be a film a lot of people seem to love as much as I do, which is why it's on my favorites list. I had a Kurosawa film on my top 10. I don't have one on my 11 through 20, but I felt like I had to have an Ozu film. He's one of the most consistent directors out there. I've actually never seen a bad Ozu film, and I've seen a lot now. I've been, cycling through his movies, and I've probably seen at least 20 of his films now, and I can't say that I've seen a bad one. Many of them are actually very similar. Tokyo Story really stands out. It's a little darker maybe than the usual Ozu film, but it's also just one of the most profound films I've seen, and really just punches, has an emotional punch that is just hard to reckon with. So
excellent. Let's see. My number 17 is a comedy. So nice to see you had a romantic comedy, by the way, in the top. That's good. This one stars Jack Lemmon, Marilyn Monroe, and Tony Curtis. Strangely enough, I got two Tony Curtises in Some Like It Hot. Billy Wilder's fantastic and zany and fast-paced comedy. I like my comedies fast, people. And another love triangle in this one. That was really kind of strange, right? And Marilyn
Monroe. This is a foursome, though.
Marilyn Monroe, of course. she could wear an eye patch and she still would draw your attention. Jack Lemmon is always hilarious, especially when it's fast-paced and it's a little crazy, and he becomes frazzled. And of course, Tony Curtis doing a great Cary Grant impression, and both him and Lemmon in drag is just nonstop hilarity.
Right.
My favorite scene, of course, is when they're on when Sugar and Lemmon are up in the train, up in the bed, and they're having a little private party. He just wants to keep it a private party, and everyone keeps joining,
right,
and everyone keeps
up.
coming in, and that's just absolutely hilarious. The black and white in this film is just beautiful, beautiful. It certainly wins an argument to make films back in black and white again. And of course, with Billy Wilder, it's always very smart, very funny, and certainly a thinking man's comedy. So. Love this film.
I could have had maybe a whole 10 list just of Billy Wilder films, to be honest.
Yeah,
When I was
I'm
making
surprised
my list,
you don't have this one.
I have a different Billy Wilder film,
You
but later
had
on.
one department.
I did have one. I know, but I had to. He's one of my favorite directors. There's only a couple that they deserve duplicates. My number 16 film is The Battle of Algiers from 1966, and this is an interesting pick because this is a film that I've had to teach last year, and that was one of the reasons I became really passionate about this film. I was teaching it to students and realizing how strongly I didn't realize how strongly I felt about the film until I was practically screaming at a classroom of students, telling them they had to watch this movie if they wanted to understand anything about the way the world works, if they wanted to understand anything about terrorism and globalization and the effects of war.
Wow,
on
sounds like
people.
a fun class.
Yeah, and well, it was a class about globalization, so it kind of fit, And a lot of people still have not seen this film, even though it's a very important film. It's a film that's been used by groups such as the Pentagon. George W. Bush screened this film, and the IRA, and lots of different groups have screened this film to look at counterterrorism and terrorism. But more important than that, it's also a moving tribute to the power of the human spirit. It also is an amazing film in that it's an early film that seems sort of documentary-like, even though it actually is a fictional film using non-professional actors to great effect. You cannot tell these are non-professional actors. They are amazing actors in this film, and just fantastic cinematography all around. Just an altogether fantastic film. Also in Criterion Collection, double disc set. I highly recommend it. Lots of great extras.
Ooh. So my number 16, I had to put in a Hitchcock in here, and even though Notorious is one of my favorites, I had to go with Vertigo. Jimmy Stewart, post-World War II, always played the most wicked, strange, crazy, frantic, messed up characters, and why America just insists upon making him sweet and lovable and huggable just drives me crazy. You watch Vertigo, the man is twisted and wrong, and I love this movie. This, of course, is the great Hitchcock film where everyone went left to right to the first half, and then then right to left to the second half. This is Hitchcock at his absolute best. The look, the feel, the tension, the mood that is created. Kim Novak playing his ultimate blonde, and a woman who's tortured slowly by Jimmy Stewart's character. My favorite line in the film when I saw this in the theater when it was put out years ago was, you just change your hair color. It can't matter that much to you. And people kind of laughed, and it was like, haha, how funny and how sick. And he literally makes over a woman to look like this other woman who he loved before and lost. And I mean, this is just wrong on so many levels. And it is such a dense film. It's such a smart film. That opening sequence where he, first has the accident and receives vertigo. I mean, it receives vertigo. It develops vertigo. It's a great film. Certainly, this is one that more people should see. And if you were to remake anything, Gus Van Sant, why wouldn't you do Vertigo? But that's okay. I had to have a Hitchcock in here, and thank goodness I had a little Jimmy Stewart in there as well. I love this film, and so that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
Yeah, no, obviously it's hard to argue with Vertigo as a pick. What funny story they showed in a class of mine last year, and one of the students said, I think the acting's bad. You can imagine my reaction as I almost fell out of the chair, like criticizing Vertigo, how dare you. But Notorious, of course, is in my top 10 of all time, and that's my favorite Hitchcock film. And but Vertigo
the camera movements when they follow her around. I mean,
Vertigo's hard to argue with.
It's stalking.
So speaking of Billy Wilder, you talked about Some Like It Hot. My number 15 film is Double Indemnity from 1944 by Billy Wilder. Those are, I could put Some Like It Hot in here probably as well, but Double Indemnity is a film that I've rewatched several times in the last year, and I had to have a Barbara Stanwyck film in this list because I love Barbara Stanwyck, and this is one of the this is the film that sort of set the pattern for what film noir would become, to be quite honest. The chiaroscuro lighting, the femme fatale character, and Fred McMurray playing against type. Fred McMurray, Our Two Sons, or whatever the TV show he was in.
My Two Dads?
No. You know what I'm talking about.
Father Knows Best.
Father Knows Best,
right?
all-American wholesome guy playing a not-so-wholesome character in this film. Just great acting all the way down the line, great lighting, a tight script, wicked dialogue. I mean, Billy Wilder doing what he does really well, which is just hard-boiled cynicism all the way down the line, and one memorable line after another. I mean, you could just quote this movie until the end of days.
All right, so we'll move on to my number 15, which is a musical. So all the people out there that say I'm tough on musicals, here's another one that was one of my top 10. There's now one of my 11 through 21. This is Duck Soup, Leo McCarey's Duck Soup with the Marx Brothers, which skewers musicals. It also skewers war, and also skewers society and high society. Pretty much just goes all out and takes no prisoners. We've got all four of the Marx Brothers, Chico and Harpo and Groucho and the fourth one. This is a very zany film, a crazy film, and they have these huge musical, elaborate numbers that are just silly as well as they are just big, huge, and glamorous and kind of over the top. My favorite scenes, of course, are the Peanut scenes with the hats, and of course there's the infamous mirror image scenes where they all dress up like Groucho Marx. Yeah. And of course, if aliens were to threaten to destroy our planet, I would certainly show them this film to say, hey, these people have a sense of humor and we enjoy life, and it's the other reason why that Woody Allen at the end of Hannah and Her Sisters, his character finds the meaning of life by watching this film.
Yeah, hard to argue with Duck Soup. My number 14 film is one that Bryan actually had on his top 10. It's Pulp Fiction from 1994 by Quentin Tarantino. Just a modern classic, and I think time has, this is a film that definitely has stood the test of time. Pulp Fiction continues to be as razor sharp as it was when it first came out, and it also set the template for what independent films would try to do over and over again and would fail to do over and over again. And I don't think most of these actors have ever been as good since then. John Travolta, Uma Thurman, Samuel L. Jackson. It's just Bruce Willis. I mean, it's a phenomenal cast, a phenomenal film, and the arrival of a great filmmaker. So it's just hard to argue with Pulp Fiction.
All right, my number 14 is Martin Scorsese's gritty 1970s film, or excuse me, 76, Taxi Driver, starring De Niro, Sybil Shepherd, Jodie Foster, and again, Harvey Keitel. This is weird.
Two Harvey Keitel
movies, I know.
Crazy.
And, this is, for me, I always feel that this could have been a romantic movie. Up to the point where they go to the theater, I always thought Sybil Shepherd and De Niro had this great chemistry. They're both so young and fresh-faced, and they're just beautiful, and I always want more for them. And because of De Niro's characters, because of Bickle's problems with the Vietnam hangover, certainly still affecting a lot of people in the 70s, we get to see the dark side of America and the underbelly there as he tries to find Jodie Foster, which is inspired by John Ford's The Searchers. But, I can watch this film over and over again. Albert Brooks is also in it, don't forget. And
Albert Brooks is in it?
Albert Brooks is in it as well, yeah.
Wow,
he works in the campaign office. Yeah. And when I met Paul Schrader, I had him autograph this movie. I own some of his movies, but I had to have him autograph this. Even though he didn't direct it, he wrote it, and I had to have him autograph this copy. So absolutely, this was in my top 10 for the longest time until I'd seen too many other films.
So is this your highest Scorsese film?
Yes.
It is.
This is his best film, in my opinion.
In your opinion, it is, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
That's interesting. Albert Brooks on several. You're having a lot of repeats. Yeah. Harvey Keitel, Albert Brooks.
I'm monogamous.
We have a lot of time to use up, so I'm just trying
to...
Are
you sure? Because that doesn't look like we have a lot of time. We just went halfway through.
We have only 3 movies left.
Oh, that's right. We're going to 1? We're going to 11? Oh, I was confused. I'm cranking right along.
Yeah.
Oh, well, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just thought I'd mention that, but that's a great pick. I think Mean Streets is my favorite Scorsese film, personally, but Taxi Driver...
Over Goodfellas?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
easily. And Raging Bull?
Well, Raging Bull would be a close second.
Last Temptation of Christ?
Oh, yeah. Easily. Mean Streets is definitely...
Fighting words.
But, Mean Streets is a really respectable
pick. But I would say it's fifth.
Scorsese at his hungriest. That's what I like about it. I bet Raging Bull would probably be second.
No.
Yeah. My number 13 film is Au revoir les enfants by Louis Malle, a director who in the past few years I've really developed an affinity for. I think he's maybe one of the more underappreciated French directors of the French New Wave period, and he just did an amazing amount of films. Le Comme Lucien is one of his greatest films as well. But Au revoir les enfants is the film of his that I had to own when I saw it, and so that's one of the reasons I decided to put on this list. I think it's one of the best films of the 80s period, and which maybe isn't saying much, I suppose, if you look at it in some ways. But there's some great films in the 80s, and in that it seems timeless. You watch it now, you wouldn't even think it was a film that came out in the 80s. I think it's one of the best films ever made about the Holocaust because it's so personal. It's about Louis Malle's real experience that was based on his own life of being in a Catholic boarding school where they were hiding Jewish children, and the experience when he befriends one of these children who's in hiding. And it's a movie about kids, told from the kids' perspective, with some of the best child acting I've ever seen in a film. It's a film.
French.
They're French, so it comes off better. Maybe that's it. But it's a phenomenal film. If you haven't seen it, I mean, it is a tearjerker. It will get you emotionally, but it's not trying to tug at your sympathies. It's not laying it on. It's not maudlin. It has wonderful, joyous moments with the priests and some of the, wonderful scenes where they go out in the forest, and some senses of discovery and friendship and even rivalry between the two boys. And I just love this film. So.
One look.
One look.
Just the one look, one mistake.
I know, and that makes it hard. I know, but it's a great
I remember
film.
that when I talk about the flashbacks of all the films I've seen. That's certainly one of the scenes that will always stick back in my head. Number 13, Howard Hawks being my third favorite director. Gosh, I got two of his movies in my top 20. Is His Girl Friday. This is one of those movies that when I'm in a bad mood or I'm a little blue, or if I'm just feeling that maybe things aren't so good,
this was a close one
I
for me,
throw
too.
this movie in my DVD player and I thoroughly enjoy it from beginning to end. This is Rosalind Russell's actually does a fantastic job, and you always think of Cary Grant. He's more the supporting actor in this. This is her picture. She carries this film from beginning all the way to the end, and that rapid fire dialogue.
I think it's one of the fastest films ever made. You really have to be on your toes.
Absolutely fantastic.
We're talking about Some Like It Hot. This one's even faster.
I just recently watched Moonlighting, the television show, which certainly is taken from this, and I love that. Cary Grant, of course, is absolutely fantastic during those opening scenes where she first goes in to tell him that she's getting married. Watch his eyes. After she tells him, I'm getting married, we're getting married, and she shows him the ring, and he looks at it, then he watches his eyes, because he's thinking, how am I going to keep her, here, I got to keep her here, and I love that. Then they go out to lunch. Fantastic. And Bellamy, who always does a great job of being a fool, I should say, is so charming. It's so nice. And when they go to that dinner scene where he's falling for Cary Grant's date is the one that goes up there and sings the song, and her dress goes woo 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 woo. It's absolutely hilarious.
Yes.
There's no way to watch this film unless you're a little slow and not enjoy it and not find a lot of humor in it, because again, it is very fast. It is a rapid fire, and those are the kind of things I like. And I love how Howard Hawks can always pull the best performances out of people. Not a lot of flash. Just set the camera in a nice medium shot and let her rip.
Carrie, if my vote for actors, if we could bring someone back from the dead, not that we would want to do that, but I think you and I could agree Cary Grant would be up there. Bringing Up Baby, Philadelphia Story, both on our top 10 now. Yep. The Awful Truth and His Girl Friday. And His Girl Friday. I mean, geez. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to my number 12, which is The Third Man by Carol Reed, a director who's not known for doing a lot of other great films, but boy, it's okay. There's some of these directors. Night of the Hunter is one of them. This is another one. The Third Man is one of my all-time favorite films. It stars Orson Welles in one of his greatest performances, and maybe an uncredited writing role as well. And Joseph Cotton. It's a great post-war film. Yet another one, not quite 50s, 1949. So I'm getting close. But I seem to have a lot of these post-war movies on my list, and I'm not really sure why. But this is just a film that's just wonderful, and it's a mystery, and it's clever, and it's also incredibly complex and sly, and it never goes exactly where you think it's going to go, and I love films like that. And I wouldn't say it's very dark. I have a lot of really dark films on my 11 through 20.
Okay, so my number 12 was probably the most influential film in my entire life. I cannot stand in a puddle. I don't swim much. I don't like pools because as a child, when I was 4, my mother forced my oldest sister to take their siblings along with her on a date, and we saw Jaws. As a 4-year-old, this is a film that still to this day terrifies the living hell out of me. I watch this film at least once a year with about 5 other films. I honestly think of this film every day, even in the shower. I think of this film, and it scares the living crap out of me. The scene where Roy Scheider's in the boat and the boat's actually going down, where you've got claustrophobia and cold water coming up, and then the shark busts in, is the single most terrifying thing ever. Unless Michael Myers from Halloween was riding him and spiders shot out of its mouth, I couldn't get any scarier. That's it.
Now I want to see that film. That would be one
of course, you have Steven Spielberg, where he first hits his stride, first finds the movie magic. You've got Roy Scheider, who's probably one of the most underrated action actors out there. You have Robert Shaw, who's the fantastic Ahab, and then Richard Dreyfuss, who Pauline Kael called the Woody Allen role, and does a great job. Never forget this film. I think of it every day, and I absolutely love it, and it terrifies the crap out of me.
My number 11 film is a film that probably should have been on my top 10, but I picked another film by this director instead because I couldn't make up my mind, and I didn't want to have 2 films by the same director in my top 10. It's McCabe and Mrs. Miller by Robert Altman. As most of the fans of the show know, Robert Altman's my favorite filmmaker of all time. I love Altman. I have a portrait of him hanging in my house. That's how much I love Altman. McCabe and Mrs. Miller is one of his greatest films. I had Nashville in my top 10. If you haven't seen McCabe and Mrs. Miller, you need to see it. It's a revisionist Western. It's Warren Beatty in one of his greatest performances with Julie Christie, and they have fantastic chemistry. It is a dark film, but it has a wonderful music score with songs from Leonard Cohen. There's nothing wrong with this film. It is a perfect film.
You know, this would easily be in my top 50, possibly somewhere in the 30s there. That's a great film.
You just can't argue with
Absolutely
McCabe and Mrs.
fantastic.
Miller. It's just, there's just nothing wrong with it. It's a perfect film.
It's a huge film. In fact, I actually think Brad Pitt just recently dropped in a comment.
He mentioned that it was one of the greats, and it doesn't matter what year movies come out, eventually people will find the great films. So.
Yeah, and it's cool that you have a Western.
Western-ish. It was filmed in the Northwest, so I have a Northwest connection in my films.
My number 11 is a Western. Can you guess which one, Angela? It's John Ford. It's got John Wayne. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, but it is The Searchers. This is by far the greatest Western, period. This is it. And no matter what Angela may think, some days. Didn't like The Godfather much either. This is John Ford's truthful look at the Western frontier, with John Wayne playing the role of Ethan, who's probably one of the most difficult and complex protagonists out there. We get a non-flinching look at, like I said, the frontier in terms of where we were in that time in our history. How, of course, Ford always had Western films, but this one he actually shows the evils of both sides. We see the cavalry not seen as something that goes out and saves the day. We see the torture of Indians. We see the back and the forth there with this one as well. Is very critical of both. It's an iconic ending, of course, in the doorway. As I've grown older, and every time I see this film, this is one I watch every year. My position on Ethan changes. Some years I want him to. He can come home. Get in the doorway, Ethan. Come home.
Yeah.
And other times I watch. Other times I watch and you think, well, maybe he shouldn't come home. So that's an incredible film, and of course it's beautiful looking. So as always.
Well, that's our 11 through 20, and now you've got some viewing to do. You can check that out on our website, realfilmsnobs.com, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We wish you a great day and great movies.